for our first mini project. We're going to develop a series of icons that we can use on a website and a mobile app. And I wanted to do this because I think we can learn a lot of the tools and even further learn the tools that we just went over by doing projects and kind of showing you how these tools work in a real world application. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one, I want to have really clean, simple icons with nice, bold, thick lines and a flat style of design. So super simple. The icon needs to be visible when you zoom out. So it's got to be an icon that doesn't have super duper thin lines. It could be easily read at only 25 by 25 pixels in size. So we really need these icons to be very simple, powerful, and bold. So that's kind of the idea behind these and behind these series of icons. And the future of design is digital. So learning how to do these digital oriented projects, especially when it comes to web app design and website design, you need to learn how to do these kind of icons and different graphics for the web. So let's go ahead and get started with the search icon. I like to use real photos as a reference because it just really helps me get an idea of what that shape looks like in real life, so I can be able to simplify that even further. So I'm going to use this real photo, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the ellipse tool. Go ahead and hold down Shift to make my little circle. Go ahead and bring that over here. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just getting a general idea of what we want the icon to look like. Let's go ahead and bold our stroke a little bit. So I'm over here. I'm going to bold it quite a bit. I want to make it fairly thick so that you can see it when it's really, really tiny. And I have a good idea of the shape of the handle that I maybe want to emulate a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab. We can always trace with a pen tool, or we can create a series of shapes and join them together. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get the rounded rectangle tool, which if you do not see it on your default panel, there's these little 3 dots at the very bottom of your toolbar. It says Edit Toolbar. Go ahead and click on that, and there's many more tools available that you can drag over here and swap out for tools maybe you don't use. So what I did is I went down here. Let me see my shapes. There's my shapes, and I was able to click on it and drag it onto the toolbar. So if you ever see a tool that I'm working with that's not there by default because we did the default layout workspace when we first started, and you don't see it, just go to these 3 little dots and you'll be able to pull up any of the tools I talk about. You'll be able to drag them over. So this shape tool, I can drag it over here, and if I don't want it, I just drag it back. And you can build the toolbar how you like it. There's probably some tools I might even drag out because I want to simplify my workspace so that less icons we have, the better. So I just wanted to kind of go over that real quick. So let's go ahead and grab the rounded rectangle tool, and this is automatically going to have the rounded corners, so I don't have to do that manually. Let's kind of reduce the stroke so I can see my shape a little better. And I'm just going to create a couple of these to kind of get that shape. I'm going to go up to shape, and so this already has the rounded corners on it by going up to shape, but it's too much. Let's kind of reduce the amount of curves. Let's make it less of a curve. So we're just going to cut this in half. So now it's 0.4. Let's do 0.2, and I have them linked, so they're all going to change at the same time. So enter, and it's going to have less curves going on there. I'm going to continue to create different shapes. And I might even switch to fill at this point so I can kind of see how my shape is looking. So I could do another little shape here, another one here, and maybe with the pen tool we can draw a little bit of details here. We can take our pen tool and we're just going to draw a little custom shape. Oops, let me go ahead and make this a different color so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Just click up here, just going to make a little bit of a curve. Click up here, make a little bit of a curve. And now I could take the eyedropper tool and sample the red. And right now I have all these little elements, but I want to join them together, but I also want to make them center. These aren't really center aligned, and let me make these all a different color so you can see what I'm talking about. So they're not all aligned, so how do I align those so they're all nice and even? So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift and select all of my items. I think there's 5 in total. And I'm going to go up here to my Align. The Align panel, you can find the Align options up here at the top, or let me go ahead and get rid of that update. You can go over to your Align panel and do it that way. And just do a simple horizontal align center. So when I click on this, everything's going to align perfectly. And so now I want to group my objects together. And now I'm going to align it to the top object because now we have this aligned within each other. So let's select our grouped object. Let's go ahead and make that one color now. And now we're going to group it with our top object. So now we're going to go back over to our align panel and do a horizontal align center. And you could do the same thing. There's left alignment, there's right alignment, and there's center alignment. There's quite a bit of alignment options, which I'll use frequently throughout the class. So any of the tools I use, you're going to see a lot. So if you feel like, oh, I didn't quite master that tool, I don't feel comfortable with that tool, we're going to be reusing a lot of these tools over and over when we do these practical projects. So you're going to have lots of practice. So don't feel overwhelmed at any point with one particular tool. I'm just taking the direct selection tool and manipulating a couple of these objects. It's going to take my handle and that might be too detailed of a handle. We'll see. We don't really need the photo reference anymore, so let's go ahead and delete it. So now it's all about finding the right balance with our icon. And so what I'd like to do when I develop icons is I like to zoom out every once in a while so I can kind of really get a good scope of how the object is going to look in real time. So this icon is probably going to be viewed probably around this size. So it's good to kind of zoom out to see if I can make out and define all of the major parts of this icon. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back in and make this a lot thicker, this little object. So we could just kind of pull this out and make it just a little bit wider. Or we could hold down Shift on this corner and just make the entire object bigger. And then we could simply cut this object below. So what we could do is right click and ungroup these objects. So now that we just have this little bar selected, I'm going to drag it down. And since we have this on the shape, it's going to automatically, when I make it shorter, keep those curves the same. So I can make this handle shorter very easily without having to change the curves. So now I'm just kind of adjusting and trying to make this a little more simple of an icon, making sure everything's center aligned as I go along. And so we can now angle our little icon. And I think when it comes to a search icon, we might need to make this a pretty short handle, because when you have search icons on websites, they're usually put in square kind of boxes. So we really want to make sure this will fit well in a square box. So let's go ahead and angle it, see if we like it angled. We can mess with the color as well. So we can change the thickness of this outer line. We can add a little detail, perhaps make it look like a reflection. So I'm just drawing, I just did one point and another point with the pen tool. And so now I'm going to go down and add my, my rounded cap. See right here with the stroke tool, I did my rounded cap to get nice smooth caps. And I'm going to reduce the weight on this. I'm just trying to emulate reflection. So sometimes that's done with lines like this. So all I did was did the pen tool, drew a line, and then added my rounded cap. Okay, so that's one option. What I like to do when I do icon development or logo development or symbol development is I like to make what's called different iterations. And iterations is just a fancy word for another version, just to see, so I can compare several different ones and see which one I think works the best. So we're going to do just that. We're going to copy and paste. We're going to try a version without the reflection, and I think we're going to do like maybe a glass reflection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, I have the pen tool, the click and hold, and make kind of a curvy shape across, just like this. And I'm going to keep going around my stroke, just like this, and make a complete shape. Let me make that a different color so you can kind of see what's happening. Okay, so that's the shape that we created. I want to send this behind everything. So I'm going to right click, arrange. I'm going to send it as the back layer. So I'm going to do this a lot throughout projects. I'm going to be right clicking objects and I'm going to be arranging them. And there's shortcuts. Study some of these shortcuts because some of them are really make it, instead of having to right click and go through this process, you could do shortcuts. For now, I'm going to do a little bit of the long way so you guys can get comfortable with that and learn the shortcuts as you do more and more projects. But just be aware there's always shortcuts that you can do for almost anything in this program. So I'm going to go arrange and I'm going to send backwards. arrange, send to back. Now, if you send it to back, it'll send it all the way to the last layer. So that's another option we could do. Of course, the colors are not final at this point. We're just doing red so you can kind of see our shape. And we could do another variation where maybe it's upright. Okay. And maybe we don't have anything. Those kind of our different iterations. So one thing I want to do is I want to change the color. I don't like this red. That's not really going to go with the web design I have. So I'd like to do kind of a cool gradient with this too. So one thing we are going to have to do, anytime you add a gradient or you change the size up and down, and you have a shape that has a stroke to it, similar to this little circle here, we want to make sure that path is outlined so that when we make it bigger, it doesn't get smaller, and if we make it smaller, it doesn't get thick. So, similar to this when it happens, right? We want it to stay the same weight or thickness as we mess around with it. So one thing I am going to do is I'm going to select all 3 of our circles, go up to Object, Path, and Outline Stroke. So now that stroke is outlined and now it's a shape.